Toronto Maple Leafs made it official. Brendan Shanahan will not be back in Toronto after June 30th. We'll discuss its impact on the New York Islanders president and general manager searches. We've got that and a lot more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Friday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. I'm Gil Martin. I've been covering the New York Islanders for almost 2 decades, and I wrote the book Ice Wars on the history of the Islanders' rivalry with the Rangers from 1972 to the modern era. So glad you could join us today to talk a little Islanders hockey. We have got a busy show for you today. Brendan Shanahan not returning to Toronto. That's official. We'll discuss the impact that has on the Islanders' search for a new president of hockey operations and general manager. We'll talk about Anders Lee and whether the Islanders should consider trading him this offseason. Plus, we continue our player-by-player analysis of the Islanders with Ilya Sorokin, the starting goalie. We're going to start with Brendan Shanahan. And the Maple Leafs on Thursday made it official. His contract will expire June 30th. It will not be renewed. So Brendan Shanahan is on his way out of Toronto. And more reports seem to indicate that he could be one of the top, if not the top candidate to be a part of the Islanders front office, whether it's as president of hockey operations, which I think remains his most likely destination if he's going to be with the Islanders organization, or whether or not he may try to do both POHO and general manager. That is another possibility. And we know that the Islanders front office search is being directed and led by John Collins. And we know Collins and Shanahan worked together for a few years at the NHL offices. They get along well, they're familiar with each other, and they have proven that they can work together. So the question now becomes, when we know Shanahan is not returning to Toronto, will he join the Islanders organization? As of right now, I would say he is the odds-on favorite to fill at least one of those 2 positions. But we still have to see what ends up happening. Negotiations will be ongoing. Interviews will be ongoing, and we'll see what happens. And I know through comments on social media, DMs to me, emails to me, that there are mixed feelings about Brendan Shanahan. I mean, most fans so far have mostly positive views of Shanahan, more positive than negative. We put a survey up on our YouTube page. Do you favor the Islanders hiring Brendan Shanahan as their new president of hockey operations? So out of the 234 responses we've gotten so far, and you can still vote, 44% said yes, 29% said no, and 26% said he's not my first choice, but I could live with it. So we'll see. But overall, that means that roughly 70% of fans from this poll, and it's not scientific, but overall, that most people would be okay for the Shanahan to join the Islanders organization. And most of the criticism regarding Shanahan really revolves around the fact that the Toronto Maple Leafs have only won 2 playoff series during his tenure with the organization. And I get it. That's not a very good track record. But if we're talking about a president of hockey operations, two things come into my mind that work in Brendan Shanahan's favor. And again, there are things that lead me to question whether he'd be a good candidate. But overall, since every candidate is flawed, I think there are more good things than bad things about Shanahan. He came to the Maple Leafs organization in 2014. Prior to that, from the last lockout by the NHL owners in 2004, 2005, where that season was completely wiped out. Until then, for a decade, the Maple Leafs made the playoffs only once. And Shanahan, under his direction, they have made the playoffs the last 9 seasons. And that has included 105-point season, 100-point season, 115-point season, 111-point season, 102-point season, and 108-point season. That's impressive. And you got to consider also, one of those seasons where they didn't finish with 100 points or more was the COVID shortened season, and they had a 688 points percentage that year, which is better than the 108 points that they got this year. So again, they became consistent winners. And the thing that Shanahan did, there's two things I want to highlight. Not, again, that he's perfect, but unlike Lou Lamoriello, while Shanahan may not have solved the problems that the Leafs had in the playoffs, he did not keep doubling down on the same situation. He changed coaches, bringing in Mike Babcock, moving on from Mike Babcock, Sheldon Keefe, and then Craig Berube. So he tried that. He hired Lou Lamoriello, saw that Lou wasn't working out, got rid of Lou Lamoriello. He brought in different goalies and different approaches, emphasized defense a little bit more. That flexibility, that ability to say, hey, what I'm doing isn't working and I'm going to try something else is valued, especially now by the New York Islanders. The other thing that I think is important to consider that works in Shanahan's favor, he took a Maple Leafs organization where the farm system was in disarray and turned it around so that 5 of the top 6 players on this Maple Leafs team over the last several seasons have all been products of draft and develop through the system. Everydayers, the Islanders' situation with Bridgeport and with prospect development over the last 5 or 6 years in particular has been horrible. And Bridgeport had a historically bad season this year, worse than their last place finish a year ago, winning only 4 out of 36 home games. And if you go through the last 7 years when Lou Lamoriello was the GM, he traded away 4 straight first-round draft picks. He traded away Atu Ratu, who was considered the Islanders' top prospect. And I'm not saying these deals were all bad deals, but considering the Islanders never rose above a fringe playoff team during the tenure of Lou Lamoriello, even in the years they made it to the conference final, they barely made the playoffs. The failure to develop the players that this team did draft is a huge, huge issue. And the new president of hockey operations, whether he's the GM also or not, one of the major things that he has to do is to fix the farm system, the draft, the development of players, to make Bridgeport tenable again, to make Bridgeport a functioning place where you draft a guy and 2-3 years later, they're ready to play in the NHL at a high level, rather than the black hole that Bridgeport seems to have become. Everydayers, you'll recall I used that term, where prospects go into Bridgeport, but they don't come out NHL ready. In fact, most of the time, they don't come out as prospects. So we need to see the new president of hockey operations just fix the problems that this organization has. And Lou left the organization with what, by modern NHL standards, is considered a skeleton staff. They are understaffed compared to the other teams in the league. Brendan Shanahan has a track record where he helped rebuild and make the Toronto Maple Leafs farm system one of quality. And the Islanders need that so badly. So, yeah, there are plenty of criticisms. I am not saying that I think Brendan Shanahan is the perfect candidate, but there are some advantages, and that doesn't include the outside possibility that he could help woo a Mitch Marner or some other players. He does. Say what you want about Brendan Shanahan. He does have respect around the league. He's in the Hockey Hall of Fame. He is somebody who can bring a certain cachet to the Islanders organization. And we'll see whether or not he ends up a part of it. We have got a lot more to get to on today's show. I know Anders Lee is the captain, but I'm going to tell you why the Islanders are better off thinking about trading him this offseason or maybe during the coming season. Plus, we continue our player-by-player evaluation of the Islanders with goaltender Ilya Sorokin. We've got that and more still to come on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track, but that's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and save more. I still love my food, but not at the expense of my future. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you could use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. So, Anders Lee. He's been a great Islander. Really respect what he's done on and off the ice. He is a future Islanders Hall of Famer. He led the team in goals last year with 29. Second on the team with 54 points. He was a +3 on the season. But it is getting very close to the time to move on from Anders Lee. Lee will turn 35 over the summer in July, and he has 1 year left on his contract at a $7 million AAV. The Islanders are about to embark on either a retool or a rebuild. If it's a rebuild, there's no doubt Anders Lee will not be here 4 or 5 years down the road when the Islanders are completing that rebuild. And even if it's a 2 or 3 year retool, Anders Lee would be 37, 38, 39. It doesn't make sense at this point to hold on to him and to sign him to a new contract, even if he takes a pay cut down to $4 or $5 million a year for what, 1 year, 2 years at most. Anders Lee has been a great member of the Long Island community. He's been the captain. He's a future Islanders Hall of Famer. But Everydayers will recall one of my criticisms of Lou Lamoriello was poor asset management. And if you look back at the trade deadline, he wanted to re-sign both Brock Nelson and Kyle Palmieri. Brock Nelson forced his hand, made him trade him by saying, I'm testing the free agent market this summer. He didn't trade Kyle Palmieri, even though this was a seller's market by far. Now the Islanders may end up losing Kyle Palmieri for nothing. And again, where does Kyle fit in with this retool or rebuild? But concentrating on Anders Lee. Lee had a bounce back season this year. He worked on his skating. He worked on some other aspects of his game. 29 goals, much better than what he's done over the last couple of years. But at the age of 35, we all know Father Time is undefeated. So we're getting closer and closer to the point where Anders Lee's play will fall off and will never get back to this 29 goal level that we saw this year. So if you're looking at players under the cap as assets, and I don't like being this cold, but that's what a GM is supposed to do, maximize his assets. You have 1 year left on Anders Lee's contract. If you think he's going to have another 25-plus goal season, maybe you're better off holding on to him and maybe dealing him at the trade deadline. But you could also trade him now. Even if you have to retain a little bit of salary, you can get players or picks or prospects. And, you know, I've heard some chatter among some fans saying, hey, the Islanders, next year's draft, really good, really deep. The Islanders should try to tank this year to get one of the top prospects, if not the top prospect, in next year's draft. Well, I'm not advocating for that necessarily, but if you want to do that, trading your number one goal scorer while you can get a maximum return on that, that's one way to help make that happen. And again, to me, you want to maximize the return on Anders Lee. You don't want to lose him for nothing. If this Islanders team is indeed entering a transition year, it makes sense to trade Anders Lee. Whether you do it during this offseason, at or before the draft, to get more picks or prospects, whatever, or you wait until the trade deadline, that's something the new general manager is going to have to figure out. And to be honest with you, I would like to see Anders Lee get a chance to win a Stanley Cup before he hangs up his skates. And that is not that likely to happen with the New York Islanders while this team is retooling over the next 2 to 3 years. So I think it can be a win-win. Good for Anders Lee, good for the Islanders, and most importantly, good for the future of the Islanders. Anders Lee will be an Islanders Hall of Famer when he retires. There's no question about that in my mind, and he deserves it. He will go down as one of the better Islanders in the post-dynasty era. But if you're the New York Islanders right now, Anders Lee does not fit in to where this team is at right now, not at a $7 million a year cap hit. And if you want a chance to sign a Mitch Marner or a Nikolai Ehlers or a Brock Besser or whoever the goal scorer you want to try to get via trade or via free agency is, if you want to bring in that player, whether it's this year or a year after or whenever, you need to free up cap space. And that $7 million cap hit for Anders Lee would be great. And even if you retain 20%, so you save, $5 million in change off the cap. And you can get another draft pick. You can get another prospect. You could get a younger player in return. There are so many options that this team could have. If you think Lee is going to struggle this year and go back to where he was a couple of years ago, you trade him now during the offseason. If you think he's got another strong start in him, you may want to wait till the trade deadline. But the new GM has to figure out, when do I get the most value for Anders Lee? And how can Anders Lee, as an asset, help me with this retool best? We'll see. It's a tough decision. Emotionally, I really like Anders Lee, but I think we're getting to the time where the Islanders have to consider moving on from Lee and continuing this retool and building for the future. We have got a lot more to get to on today's show. We will continue our player-by-player analysis of the Islanders with Ilya Sorokin, the team's starting goalie, and for our Islanders' birthday of the day, a Slovakian winger who was with the team for parts of 3 seasons in the late 90s up till 2000. Let's see if you can guess who that is. We've got all that and more still to come on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. So we continue our player-by-player analysis of the Islanders right now with Ilya Sorokin. Everydayers, we're doing one player a day. You know we've already discussed Matthew Barzal, Anthony Duclair, Simon Holmstrom, Tony DeAngelo, Mark Gatcomb. We're going to continue to analyze this team and see where they're at. Sorokin had statistically a better year than he did a year ago. He started 60 games, played in 61, had a .907 save percentage and a .271 goals against average, had 4 shutouts. But here's the thing about Sorokin. He was still inconsistent at times. And I think there's little doubt that he wore out as the season went on. 2 reasons for that. Number one, Semyon Varlamov, injured, unavailable. So the Islanders didn't trust Marcus Hogberg right away. When Hogberg got hurt, they were down to, Tristan Lennox and Jakub Skarek. They didn't trust them very much. So even though he didn't start the first few games because of the back surgery he had last offseason, he still ended up with tying a career high with 60 starts and being 1 game away from his career high in appearances with 61. The other thing that I think contributed to the wearing down of Ilya Sorokin later in the season, he faced more high danger chances than almost any goalie in the NHL this year. The defense in front of Ilya Sorokin just wasn't getting the job done. And everydayers, we've discussed throughout this season how the Islanders struggled to clear the puck out of their zone, the turnovers, the not picking up players, not back checking properly, two defensemen, both going behind the net after the puck, leaving a forward unchecked and open in the slot. All of these things were issues for the New York Islanders over the course of this season. And realistically, the injuries to the blue line didn't help. It never got substantially better. So that was a problem. But that being said, Ilya Sorokin let in a few more soft goals than you would like to see from an elite goaltender. And, he had nights where he carried this team and kept them in games they had no business being in. And he had games where he gave up 1 or 2 soft goals that really cost the team. I honestly believe that unless the new GM comes in and wants to strip this team down to the bottom, Ilya Sorokin will be back next year and he will be the starting goaltender for this team. And hopefully he gets a little more support in front of him and can return to being the Vezina Trophy finalist he was 3 seasons ago. I think that's very possible, but I would like to see the Islanders get him down to about 50 to 52 starts. If I can get, 51 starts from Ilya Sorokin and 31 starts from the backup goalie, whoever that may be, hopefully Varlamov is back, or they bring in someone else, or Hogberg plays better, whatever it is, whoever that backup is. I want Sorokin sharp for if there's a playoff drive, and if they do make the playoffs, keep his use in the low to mid 50s during the regular season, and he'll be much sharper later in the year. Again, the Islanders are in transition this year. It may not make a big impact, but I don't want to wear down and overwork my starting goalie. I still think if you were to ask the other 31 general managers around the league, if you're starting an NHL team now and you had to pick your very first player, one player off the New York Islanders' present roster, the vast majority of those 31 GMs would start with Ilya Sorokin. So we'll see. I expect more from him next year, a better season from him next year. But the key to that is A, he stays healthy, B, he doesn't get overworked, and C, that the team in front of him plays better defensively. And that may not happen because in this retool, you may be taking one step back with the hope of taking two steps forward. We'll see, but I do expect with Sorokin under contract for the foreseeable future, he will be the number one goalie on the Islanders, and hopefully he will continue to be one of the better goalies in the NHL with a little more support and a little less workload. I think that's realistic. Time now for our Islanders birthday of the day, and Saturday will be the 48th birthday of former Islanders winger Vladimir Orzag, the native of Slovakia, 5'11", 193 pounds, a fifth-round pick of the Islanders in 1995. He played his first 11 NHL games for the Isles in 97-98, was with the team for parts of 98-99 and 99-2000, later played for the Nashville Predators and briefly the St. Louis Blues before returning to Europe to finish his hockey career. After the 2009-2010 season, he played in 289 NHL games, 54 goals, 119 points, and 194 penalty minutes. He had 6 playoff games, all with the Predators, 2 goals and 4 penalty minutes in those playoff games. One of his better games as an Islander, April 12th, 1999. Islanders visiting the Devils in New Jersey, taking on Lou Lamoriello's Devils. Felix Potvin, the goalie for the Islanders. Martin Brodeur, the goalie for New Jersey. And in this game, midway through the first period, our Islanders' birthday of the day, Vladimir Orzag, scores his first NHL goal. Dmitry Nabokov and Barry Richter with the assist. Islanders go up 1-0. They end up winning the game by a final score of 4-2, despite the fact that they were outshot 57-23. So Felix Potvin, 55 saves, stood on his head. But our Islanders' birthday of the day, Vladimir Orzag, he had the goal. He was a +2. He scored on his only shot, and he played 15 minutes and 2 seconds worth of action. Vladimir Orzag is our Islanders' birthday of the day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. For your second listen, check out the all-new Locked On NHL Game Night. Every game, every night until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. You can find NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, send us an email to lockedonislanders@gmail.com. And if you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever's on your mind. You can follow the show on X at Locked On Isles, and you can follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR_VSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders throughout this busy and important off season. And it's great to talk a little Islanders hockey with you, game time or anytime. We will be back on Monday. We'll do a special episode over the weekend if there's some big news, but we return on Monday. We'll have the latest on the GM and president of hockey operations search. We're waiting still on an injury update from Bo Horvat. We did not get one yet. And we'll continue our player-by-player look at the Islanders with Casey Cizikas. So make sure you join us for that. Have a great weekend, everybody. Stay safe. And, of course, let's go Islanders.